It's just a way for Shia to kind of work on himself and process through things, and that's why I think this movie just if that's why it feels so raw. It feels so real, and that's what makes it so intriguing to watch. It is not a very entertaining film overall. Very tough scenes of child abuse and psychological abuse. But Shia LaBeouf's performance, I think, is worth the one-time viewing.
With your best friends Trey Sterling and Matt, the film Schmucks. Hey, what's up, guys? It's the film Schmucks. We're all here. I'm Matt. We got Trey over there. We got Sterling down below. We're back with another one this week. One that's been on I kind of forgot about until we mentioned it, and then I was like, oh yeah, I kind of wanted to see that, which sometimes are a great movie to watch. So we watched Honey Boy this week. Let's just jump right into it. Honey Boy, Trey, maybe you can give a little overview of the movie.
I mean, yeah, it has kind of it jumps right in at the beginning where where he goes into rehab, and about Shia LaBeouf's I don't know if I don't even know. There's like 8 ways to say his last name, whatever. But Shia is basically a biopic, I would say, that he wrote, I believe. I mean, he had a lot of input, obviously, portraying his father, and yeah, I mean, it's a powerful movie. I mean, child labor laws. I mean, we can go into a lot of stuff in this movie. But anyway, child acting. I can't relate to this movie. I can relate to. I can relate to not as bad of. I mean, a childhood, but like, there's rough time. Everybody has rough times, so you can relate in some ways to this. But
Yeah.
it's powerful. There's a lot of powerful moments. I mean, we'll probably talk about later, bring it up later. But I think I like something that's not even in the movie. But Shia's dad did not want him to play his dad, and I think that's really awesome that he did that because like screw the guy.
Yeah.
When somebody's movie, yeah, I don't give a crap what you want. I'm gonna tell my story from my point of view, and you can go kiss my ass. So I like that. Anyway, we'll talk about details, but it's powerful. It's a very powerful movie. We went from talking about deaf people, AA meetings, down to alcoholism. I mean, a big swing here.
Yeah. Well, his dad actually he thought Mel Gibson was going to play him. Apparently, like Shia told him that Mel Gibson was going to play him, and then he kind of was deceptive. So. Anyway, yeah.
Maybe he did. Maybe he signed on and backed out.
I don't think so. I'll just go. So I saw this in 2019, and it was definitely one of the more notable movies that I saw that year. It is definitely a powerful movie for sure, but it's not an easy watch at times. There are some very uncomfortable. Let's just say child abuse scenes in this movie that is not easy to watch. This is not an entertaining movie, I would say, but but I think it is an effective movie for what it's trying to say, and it's basically a therapy movie. It's therapy for Shia, and it's the way he expresses his relationship with his father, and it's kind of interesting. I think he does a really good job of not making him such a disgusting villain. He actually adds layers to his dad, especially with the scene where he's talking at the meeting, and he talks about how he became a sex offender, and even before that, how he was raised, and it really shows that his dad is just a product of his environment, which it was a bad environment, and that's not an excuse, but it is a reason to show that he wasn't born evil. Like no one is really born evil, but the environment that he was in really gave him a bad start to his life. And so, it was just really interesting to see the respect, but also he didn't really sugarcoat a lot with his father. Like there are definitely some bad things to his character for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about. I think you kind of nailed it there. And there's really it showcases sort of cycle of abuse pretty well. in that sense. And it's interesting. When I had heard about this movie, I actually thought it was going to be more about, my idea of the movie was that it was going to be Shia being a child actor and him having some like a-hole dad who like keeps pushing him on the acting thing. I thought it was going to be more about that, like the acting part of it. So it was interesting that like a huge chunk of the movie basically just takes place in this little motel room. Yeah, I think just right off the bat, I'd say the thing that I took away from the movie the most, like you guys said, it's a powerful movie. And I think where it, and you said it best, like this is a personal movie. It feels very personal, the movie. It feels like you said, Shia, this is like therapy. It feels like he, because I don't know exactly how accurate everything is in the movie to what happened, but I do know Shia LaBeouf did get into a serious car accident, right? And I'm assuming that this is pretty accurate as to what happened, and it makes me feel like this movie, the screenplay, was born from him going to therapy and realizing all this fucked up stuff.
Well, he wrote the script in rehab.
Okay, that was the feeling I got, and it comes through. There's a couple of times, minor, we'll get to it, where like this is his personal thing, and it shows, because there's some times where I'm like, I don't even know if this connects to the audience really, but you can tell that this is personal to him, and we'll get to it, mostly the ending. So but the best thing about it is like the dad, I don't know if I can think of in recent memory a movie conveying the feeling of being a scared kid or like a powerless kid, because his dad's not necessarily like a big brute, kind of guy, but like it felt very real, the like verbal abuse, and you could tell the kid was kind of scared of him because he's intimidating in a way, like in his own way. And it's like, man, I don't know if I've seen that conveyed in such a real way where you really feel for the kid of like, oh, he's in this really messed up relationship with his dad where like he's constantly kind of afraid, but he also loves his dad, so he doesn't want his dad to leave, and like that thing, it's like, oof, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, he was just powerless. I mean, being so young, and I mean, like they have that moment or a scene with him yelling at his dad, and hey, who would hire a felon? I'm paying you. He didn't say I'm your boss, but like, hey, I pay you. I want you here. It's just that scene was really hard to watch because you could feel the tension building, and he, before that scene, he's talking to his dad, but not really talking to his dad, telling him what he wants to tell him, which was a powerful scene too. That was good acting by that kid.
Yeah.
Well, it also kind of portrays the language of an abuser pretty accurately too. There's a lot of times where Shia's character will just be like, you make me angry, basically. You're the one that's pushing me. It's basically your fault that I'm like this. And so I thought that was very raw and very real and very effective. And it's one of those things that's really interesting to kind of study about, like the relationship between the abuser and the person being abused, especially when it comes to a father-son dynamic, because obviously there's a lot of conflicting feelings with the son. He doesn't really like his dad, but he still loves his dad, which is it's very contradictory, but it's very real, and it's something that I feel like most abused children go through, if not all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of why all that works, I think, is Shia's performance, obviously. And I have to say, I don't know what you guys thought. The very first time we really see the dad, I think it's him kind of watching the laundry area or whatever. He's standing by the door. He's got the gut. He's got the dorky glasses. He's got the bandana. And I was a little bit like, is this going to be really cartoonish? Like my first thought was like, is this going to be believable? Or like, am I going to be sitting here the whole time thinking, oh, that's just Shia with long hair and a gut? Like I thought by the end of that first scene, like 2 minutes later, I'm already not thinking about that. The character was so interesting. And part of why you said he was complex, so why the character's so complex is that he's actually pretty funny, like in a stupid kind of way. Like it reminds me of some of the guys I work with, where like that kind of blue collar, like pretty quick. Like he's actually pretty charismatic, like in a way, in like a kind of a dumb way. He's kind of charismatic, and so you could when he's being like fun or funny, he's kind of likable. And then when he just turns, that anger switch turns, and then all of a sudden he's super intimidating. But I think the performance surprised me, because I didn't really get taken out of it because of the fact that he's playing this kind of goofy character. Instead, I was just like, no, this is a real guy. I totally believe this is a real guy. And I wasn't even thinking that much about it being Shia LaBeouf.
Well, you say earlier you thought you were worried it was going to get cartoonish. It's just so funny you say that, because in that scene, he's watching the laundry room and he's yelling at him. He's like, "Hey, don't touch my socks! Those are my socks!"
By the way, because they don't explain what he's looking at first, and I was really confused about what the fuck he was talking about. And then I think I kind of caught on the socks thing, but I guess I just forgot that isn't the first scene. The very first time we see him, it's when he's telling the story, I think, right?
Oh, yeah,
to the lady about the chicken poop. He's trying to get her number.
Oh my god.
I mean, by the way, there's a lot of great little like moments that they don't put it in your face, but it is symbolic and shows like a thing where he's this, as an adult, he's drinking on set and he has that vest on and he's having trouble getting it off. And then it shows him as a kid, which, by the way, that was that sequence, like the editing and everything, the way they did that was really cool, with him as an adult and then him as the kid. But then him as a kid, and he's like, "Hey dad, can you help me get this off?" And it's so clear that dad's not really paying attention to him. And by the end of the scene, he doesn't help him get it off. He ends up criticizing him for something, like, "You shouldn't fucking talk that way." Yeah. And the whole time the kid's like, "I still didn't get the vest off." And it's just like kind of like this symbol of like his dad isn't really there for him, emotionally. And then he's still dealing with that as an adult. And they showed that in a good way with the vest, of like this symbolic thing. A lot of little things like that.
Which, speaking of the editing, I do have a loose connection to the editor. My roommate is good friends with the editor, or one of the editors, Monica Salazar. So
what?
I figured I'd mention that,
All right. Well, okay. Let me erase some of my nitpicks. Great editing. I loved it. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have any qualms with the editing.
Well, hey, it's a 95-minute movie, so what do you think about that, Matt?
I'm glad you brought it up. I was shocked when I saw the thing, because yesterday we and Christy were like, we should watch it tonight, because it gets hard sometimes to watch the movie on a Friday right before the podcast. And also sometimes I don't have as much time to think about the movie, and then I end up turning heel on it. We've seen that at least twice. So I was like, yeah, we should watch it. Hopefully we don't get too tired. Usually Christy falls asleep in the long movies. So not usually. I shouldn't say that. It's only happened like once, but I just don't let her let it go. But I saw an hour and a half. I was like, what the heck? Because this type of movie specifically is almost always 2 hours at least. You know what I mean? And I also was surprised, because then you're like, well, maybe these movies are kind of meant to be a little longer, so you have more time to develop the characters. I think because this movie, it's very similar to the Sound of Metal we were talking about, where it's like, it's very concentrated. It's just him and his dad's relationship, and it rarely veers away from that in any way. And it's, like I said, most of the movie, I think, is in this motel room, basically. Like, a lot of it is. And so then you're like, it's so concentrated. If it was any longer, I think I would have, not just because I make jokes and complain about movies being too long or whatever. With this one, I was glad it was an hour and a half. It depends on, we'll get to the ending, because there's some, I don't think the ending should have been longer, but I do think it could have been different. But overall, I'm saying if this movie was 2 hours, I think I would have started going, okay, like, let's wrap it up. Like, let's get somewhere with it.
Sure. Yeah. Trey?
A lot of white noise right now, but well, for me, there's not that much to. I mean, there is and there isn't. Like, it's kind of like every scene kind of built on the previous scene, if you know what I mean. Like it builds up. He was more psychological with his abuse in the beginning, and it built up. We found out he's in AA meetings. His anger built up. He built up, and then finally it blew up. and one of the second or third to last scene when he hits him a couple times and leaves and does drugs at the titty bar. And I just feel like it kind of was just one basically storyline, which basically it was kind of a one note movie, but like we said earlier, it was Shia's story from his point of view, and Sterling with the inside source and the inside information saying that he wrote this in rehab. I mean, from that perspective, being a Shia fan, that's what intrigued me about this movie, was to see how he grew up, what's the story he's going to tell us. So it was about abuse, and he went through hell, and like a lot of like alcoholism throughout some people's families and other addictions, it followed him, and everybody has demons, and he's making a comeback right now with Peanut Butter Falcon and this one. So
Yeah, both came out the same year apparently too.
Yeah.
yep.
And they're both great performances.
Well,
Yeah, excellent.
I just wanted to say, I think this movie is definitely effective. I do have an issue with the ending, and maybe it's the same issue that Matt has. But again, what makes this movie kind of make me like it overall is that it's so fascinating. Not only the fact that it's based on his true life, but like the way the film kind of plays out, it feels like we're kind of processing some of the same things that Shia is going through. It's like he's still working on a lot of his issues, and he just kind of lays it all out in the movie. And it's just, especially the ending, I feel like that's like, to me, that was kind of like a very meta example of, okay, there's still some things that he's working on, but it's really cool that he's allowing the audience to kind of see how much he still has to work on himself, and just how much he's processing. So I thought that was very fascinating.
Could you, just out of curiosity, could you be more specific of, was there something you didn't like specifically about the ending?
Maybe it's because I saw it the second time, because I don't know if I had this issue the first time I watched it, but I kind of felt like the ending just kind of, I don't know if it's anticlimactic or what, but it just kind of ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't as satisfying as I remembered it being the first time. There is still kind of a catharsis to it, but I do think maybe something could have been added to it that would have made it kind of the cherry on top. But it just kind of like, it doesn't really like end in a climactic way, I guess.
That's basically how me and Christy kind of felt. Like we were kind of on the same page a little about it. It's hard. I won't criticize it really that hard. I can kind of say what I don't like about it. And the reason I won't criticize it that hard is because everything you were just saying of like, this is so personal. It's his journey. It's his thing. It's like, obviously the ending of this movie was very important and meaningful to him. But it's one of those things where that was one of the few times where, to me, it seemed very symbolic. It was very like, it was the one time in the movie where it was very hard to tell what's real. Is this is sort of his vision? This is wishful thinking, or what exactly are we seeing here? And that was the only time the movie really did that. And I think it's probably very effective in this like therapy sense, and it makes sense probably for him. But just as a movie, as an audience member, the ending was a little bit like, I was like slightly confused.
Yeah.
And then also I did feel a little like it was a slightly anticlimactic, even though there was good little like things there, like the dad on the motorcycle holding him. I thought that was great, but then all of a sudden it's like the dad's not there, and then you're like, okay, I guess that was all kind of a vision, which I thought made sense because it's the same motel and his motorcycle's out and he's dressed in a clown suit for some reason. Like I figured that was sort of like a representation of like what he wants, like maybe a conversation he'd like to have with his dad or something. And maybe so it just felt like it was missing. I thought maybe if we had a little bit more of him in the future, because look, part of it was I think here's a good way to say it. I think that as a kid, you're watching the kid story, I didn't even know it, but subconsciously I was kind of hoping there'd be a big change that would happen with him and his dad. Like, I kind of thought the dad was going to leave and the kid's like, okay, you know, Shia's like, I'm going to go live with my mom now, or like some kind of change would happen. Or maybe the dad would be like, you know what, fuck it, I am going to really do better, you know? But it kind of just shows, oh, he was growing the weed and then he's letting the kid smoke the weed and stuff. And you're like, nothing's really changing here. It's the same circumstance. Nothing really, there's no closure to the kid's story. But that's where the adult thing should have came in a little stronger, I think, where it's like, maybe we could have seen a little more like closure. I don't know, because I know they have the ending with the. I'm kind of all over the place here. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what was off about it to me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's because it's just that's the most personal part of the movie, probably, or at least the least where he's like, let's make this convey something to other people. It felt more like this is important to me. So.
Sure.
Yeah, it was. I think Sterling said it too earlier about the ending, that or maybe Matt maybe was about how it really never really connected to the movie. Yeah, for me it was kind of just like, Sterling said it, kind of his own self therapy, and that's how I saw it too, where he was kind of just feeling like, kind of something, maybe that's just me, like kind of talk things out in your head, and you know, because if you just isolate and keep it in, nothing's going to change. So in this therapy he's going through at rehab, he's learning how to cope and learning how to process his life and what, you know, his past. And it's kind of, I felt like it was for him like a step forward and to get past his past in a way.
Yeah.
Well, it obviously was kind of a way to kind of show that he is forgiving his father ultimately. And I thought it was kind of cool. It was definitely meta for sure, but it was cool whenever he's talking to his dad and he's like, you know, I'm going to make a movie about you. And his dad is like, okay, well, make me look good.
Yeah.
And nope.
I know. I actually laughed. Me and Christy both laughed at that.
Yeah. There was something bittersweet about that. For sure.
Yeah.
Because obviously he doesn't look great at all in this movie, but again, there are scenes in the movie that add character to him that just don't make it gives a little bit more gray to his characters, you know, a little more gray shades. So I would say it's a respectful interpretation, a respectful portrayal of his father, because it doesn't seem like he sugarcoats anything, but it doesn't seem like he's just trying to smear his character either.
Yeah, he gave him some redeeming qualities, or at least I mean, there's definitely moments where you're like, oh, you can see how a person becomes this way, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, especially the moment, the kind of monologue that he has when he ends up using, and then he's sitting on the toilet and the dad and the kids at the end of the bed, that whole monologue, it's like, you're like, this guy's a total piece of shit, but you're like, you see that he kind of knows it, like that he's struggling with it in some way, like as much as he tries to like kind of lie to himself and shit. It's like in that moment you're like, I couldn't help but feel kind of bad for him, because it's like, yeah, he's a piece of shit to this kid, but it's like somehow his life led him to this point too, and you're like, I feel bad that a human being is also in his position where he is a piece of shit, and you can tell he kind of feels like he's stuck in that thing. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have any nitpicks, Matt?
Yeah. I think I thought the scene where I thought it was okay, the point they were making where Shia kind of has that, or I guess I should say Otis has that relationship with the girl next door, you know, and it was like it was kind of fine in some sense, like overall, but there was one particular scene where they're in the bedroom and it's just kind of awkward and weird. And I understand that this must have been a real thing that was really like this, and that's why it was written this way, where you know, because it's another thing where it's like, well, a kid should not be having this type of relationship with this girl, even though he's not, you know, it's not like they actually do have sex or anything like that, but it's definitely like, oh, this is your introduction to, like, you're 12 and this is sort of your introduction to being close to a woman and stuff, and it's very inappropriate and like not okay. And so, and then he like, I mean, and I know part of it was they're conveying that point at the end, he gives her money. And I wonder, to me, I don't know what you guys thought, is that an implication of like, that's how he sees women? Cause his dad probably like pays prostitutes and stuff, and he thought that's what he was supposed to do. Or if he was just being nice, I don't know. Either way, the scene went too long to me, and it was just kind of uncomfortable. And I'm like, there was other times where they conveyed that relationship better to me, but that particular scene in the hotel room was where it was just kind of, it was weird, which was the point, but it was just too long for me. And Christy kind of felt the same way.
I feel like he was doing it to be nice because they show him, maybe with earlier where they kind of first meet, when he's gonna pop and he could see what she was going through in her life.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of feel like it was him kind of being nice to her, and my goodness, I really thought they were going there.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was literally thinking, what parent allows their kid actor be in a scene like that? Like, because I really thought they were gonna go further and further, and they got pretty close. When he took off that shirt, I was like, dang, this movie is insane.
Right.
Like, good acting, because he took it off with confidence. I'm like, all right, I guess he's ready to go. I'm about to turn this off because we don't know how old she is. Like,
yeah.
She's 16, 17, 18.
Definitely, yeah. She doesn't look much younger than 18, so.
They implied that she was, prostitute, like a prostitute, I guess, and all that. But yeah, I could not believe that movie. That's so uncomfortable, like you said, Matt, because there's ways to portray what happened in your life, but
yeah.
like you said, the scene went way too long. I'm like, when they like kiss each other's eyes or whatever, I'm like,
yeah,
oh my god, what? Like I said, I said it for like a minute straight in my head, like, what parent allows their kid actor to be in that scene?
Yeah,
how is this even possible? Like, because he's probably 12 or 13 doing that scene. So crazy to me. Sterling, what do you think? Out of bounds or just right for you?
I mean, it's very uncomfortable for sure. I don't know. I don't know if I neither agree or disagree that it went on too long, because I didn't really think about it. I don't know. I just didn't. Okay. It definitely. I guess I did want it to kind of not go in that direction of him having sex with her, obviously, but at the same time, I just kind of went with it because I'm looking at Shia's past in a way. Like, he's trying to convey what happened in his past, and so I just kind of went with it, even though it was pretty cringe.
Well, and I think that, like I said, that's probably the only scene in the movie that I was a little bit like, this could have been like not in here or shorter. I think the idea he's conveying, like, he's just showing how like every aspect of his childhood was kind of fucked up, because that is child abuse in its own way, right? So it's like that's a whole nother level where it's like that sort of weird relationship that he had with that girl probably had to have been has to be a weird thing with, for him to have to deal with getting to know women in this way, like where it's clearly an adult sort of in this weird taking advantage sort of, and I don't even know what, I don't know. It is weird, but there's other scenes in the movie, his relationship with that girl, that I think I liked more. As far as one of the scenes I liked, where first of all the music in this movie was really great. I really liked the music, particularly like that kind of, I don't know if it's a theme, but the music that plays at the beginning on the motorcycle and it plays again at the end, and it kind of comes in here and there. But when the dad goes to the strip club and like shoots up and all that, and then he's sort of having that weird where he's kind of doing the improv and stuff or whatever, the miming with the girl, that was like a good showcase of the editing and the music and the scenes. Like, me and Christy differed a little bit on this. She thought a lot of those scenes were like kind of too long. They could have wrapped up quicker. I enjoyed them enough because of the music and the way the editing was and stuff, that like, kind of like how you were saying with the cringy scene, it's like, I just was like, I didn't think about him being too long or anything.
Yeah.
I guess that's more of a cherry pick, but there's a couple scenes like that were really cool.
Yeah. And also, I thought, it was very quick editing for sure at the beginning when you're kind of seeing his downfall and him getting arrested and going to rehab. But I think that's a good example of there wasn't a whole lot of time wasted on that at all. But it still conveyed it very very well how destructive his behavior was and how and it only took like 2 minutes for
Yeah.
them to tell that whole story. So I thought that was really cool.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't really think about it again till now, but like, I don't know what you guys thought. Like, he's in all these different movies. It would show like a scene in the movie and then him getting off the set. Whenever the car wreck happened, I just thought it was another movie. Like, I thought it was another scene
Yeah.
from a movie, which I guess that must have been intentional. And that's actually a point I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting in the movie. It's not as overt, but like it seems like one of the things that they bring up in the therapy in a lot of different ways of the problem with being a child actor is not knowing what's real and what's not real as far as how people act. And like it was so, but he even says it at some point, but you can tell he's having this issue with some of the counselors as an adult because he's sort of playing, he can act, so he can like bullshit so easily. And then he thinks everyone's bullshitting all the time because of that. Because if you're growing up with that, like where you know how to bullshit and you know how to act, that must fuck with you a little bit. Especially, I mean, probably one of the most like jarring scenes as far as just being really messed up and insane was just when the mom calls on the phone and he starts acting like kind of copying the mom, like he's acting as her, and then him going back with the dad. Like that was so psychotic and weird. And you're like, it's like no wonder the kid has PTSD, because it's like a 12-year-old to be in that position doing that was so like unnerving and like sad. And then you're like, oh, no wonder this kid has issues as an adult, like not really knowing what's real and what's acting and what's not. And it was interesting.
Yeah.
Powerful scene. I mean, basically he's practicing, I guess.
One more rehearsal.
Yeah.
He didn't get the Even Stevens movie for nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shia.
It definitely kind of changes a little bit my perspective, like during those Even Steven years for sure. Because Even Stevens was one of my favorite shows growing up, and it's such a cheerful show, happy show, like just a fun TV show. And watching this, it's like you just realize how dark the behind the scenes can be, especially for children growing up in that environment. I mean, obviously he's kind of a special case in some ways because he had a terrible father, but there is a lot of other actors too, child actors that obviously went through the same thing and they had to deal with it in their own way, had to go to rehab as well. So it just kind of makes me think like, man, as a kid, it's just, ignorance is bliss. I'm just watching the TV show. I don't have any idea what's happening behind the scenes. So just kind of an interesting peek through that whole world.
Yeah. I think it's hard. It's like a weird thing. I mean, it makes you think about child acting a little bit differently. I mean, I've heard people talk, like I've heard Frankie Muniz and people like that talk where it's like they actually had pretty decent parents, but it wasn't even until somewhat recently that child actors weren't basically getting like screwed over by their parents, because I think there was a law that got put into place not even that long ago that forces parents to put like 80% of what the kids make into some kind of trust fund or something. But it's pretty wild to think that wasn't a thing for a long time, and that parents would just have their kid be a child actor and then blow the money, which is crazy.
I mean, look at the Harry Potter kids of the trio. I mean, Emma Watson's parents, I don't know the specifics, but yeah, they spent a lot of her money.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad situation from what I read, but it was just all loosey goosey. Hey,
Yeah.
my kid's making all this money, and let me
Yeah.
do my.
Yeah, I mean, there's a line that's probably tough if you're a parent in that situation because you're like, well, you got to take care of the kids and you got to be supportive. And, maybe that means you have like a pretty nice house and maybe that means you have a pretty nice car. But where's the line between supporting the kid with the kid's money and then also like living lavishly? So it actually might be difficult to find the line, but blowing all the money isn't. I think I think that law is probably a pretty good thing, obviously.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
There was one more thing I wanted to mention, and it's kind of a small thing, but there was a couple times in this movie I thought where they did a pretty good job kind of showing but not telling, like some good visual cues. One example was whenever Shia's character throws Tom into the pool, the next scene after that is Otis. He doesn't want to get in the pool at all whenever they're doing that exercise together, and it kind of lets you know like he's obviously like that's a PTSD like side effect, I guess. That was such a hard kind of traumatic event in his life where his dad was, lashed out against his basically his father figure, Tom, and that still kind of affects him to this day. And I just thought that was an interesting visual cue where, oh, okay, that's why he's so hesitant to get in the pool is because of
Yeah.
that specific moment.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection right off the bat, but that is really interesting. I mean, I think I was a little traumatized from that scene because I was like cringing so hard because Tom seemed like the nicest dude. And I was like, whenever he just was like throws him in the pool, I was just like, no, like I really did like hurt to watch. And then the kid having to see it. Oh, it's a
You had to
heartbreaking
mention
movie.
Big Brother.
Yeah, and that threw him over.
And just the way
Literally.
Shia's character describes what he's gonna do to his family, that was like,
Oh,
God
woo.
damn, dude, you are just a piece of shit.
Yeah. Dude, you know what it captured really well as far as the abuse stuff with the dad? Because he has, like I said, he has kind of a way with words. It felt so, I mean, I can't personally necessarily connect to this, but there's something that, like, it conveyed where there's a certain type of abuse to kids that is just so subtle, which is the way his dad was like near the beginning of the movie when the kid's going pee or something. And he's like, oh man, like look at your little tiny pecker and all this. And like just making these weird comments like that, where it's like, oh, I'm kind of joking, but it's like, yeah, but you are verbally abusing a kid, but you're doing it in a way that makes you feel like, oh, you're tough. I'm just fucking with you, and it's like,
Yeah.
but I think that also showed the interesting thing about the character with him is that like him being jealous of his own son in a lot of ways, clearly, right? Like, and that was like a big part of it.
Well, yeah, he couldn't make it in entertainment world, but his son can. So there is a little bit of jealousy with that for sure.
Man, when he's sitting on the bed and Otis, it's the first time, I don't think this is when he slaps him, but he does like throw a cigarette at him, I think. It's one of the hard scenes, but it was an interesting scene that showed the psychology between the two, which was when Otis is like kind of telling him fuck you a little bit, and then he's like very within the conversation and kind of, I think he might have pushes him or something, or holds him down like he's choking him or something. And then he changes, like Otis starts saying, instead of saying what kind of really wanted to say and was thinking, he starts going like, you can tell he's heard this so many times from his dad that he starts telling him exactly what he wants to hear in that moment, where he's like, I'm lucky, and if you would have had the same start I did when you were a kid, you would have been made it, and you're better with all these things, and you're really talented. It's like, that was like so like, you could just see the fucked up psychology between the two in that one scene. Oof. Tough movie. Who picked this one?
Sterling.
No, well, I sort of picked it, and then Trey just like, we'll go ahead and do it after we.
I'm glad we did, though. I'm glad we did.
No, we all agreed on it. It wasn't just me. Don't blame me, Sterling, for your wrongdoings.
Hey, no one turned heel this episode, so I don't take any blame.
I was saving it for now.
Yeah, saving it all for now. I mean, Here's my closing thoughts. These these types of movies, I mean, I don't know if you can call it a biopic when the actual person is acting for a person in his life. I mean, as his dad. I mean, I don't know if you can. But for what it is, I think it's really, really good. It was really well done. I mean, Shia's been on a comeback surge as of late, and his acting was superb. And who knows more about his dad than himself? And he knew all the mannerisms, and he's the only one that could do it. And I'm happy he did it, and I'm happy he pissed off his dad because screw his dad. And but yeah, it shows a different part of life, like Sterling was saying about, hey, we're just some schmucks watching some movies and TV shows. We don't know the behind the scenes for a lot of the stuff. I mean, more nowadays, but back then when there wasn't that much media going around, social media and all that. I mean, we were all blind to it, and like we were talking about with child acting, and we don't know what's going on in people's lives. We're just they're always saying, "Are you entertained?" I mean, yes, we're entertained. You're entertaining us, dance around for us, make us laugh, make us cry. We don't care what happened in your life. And I think it kind of it's a dual function movie in that he was kind of a self therapy, like Sterling said, and it showed the world what happens in with child actors and parents, what could be happening. So that's why I really appreciate this movie, because it shows us a whole different perspective to that world.
I'll say that I'm just gonna say it real quick. I forgot. I did have one other nitpick, which was the motel room. It was hard to tell. Did this movie take place within like a month? Did it take place within several months? If he was on TV, if he's on TV, if he has TV money, why are they living in this little motel? Christy said that maybe the dad's really bad with money and he's just spending it really poorly or something, and that's why they're in the shitty motel. But I was a little confused, like, why, unless the movie just takes place within a short amount of time and they're in the hotel. Anyway, I'll let the commenters figure that one out. I think this movie, it overall, because of the ending, it didn't like 100% land as like, wow, this is like one of the best films I've seen in a long time. But it did convey some things in the movie that I have not seen. I mean, the fact that I'm relating to like a little boy in a movie, and like I'm feeling very much like I'm almost feeling the powerlessness that he's feeling with the dad, and I'm feeling the intimidation that he's feeling with the dad from watching it. It's hard to pull that off in a movie, and I haven't seen it done very well. And maybe I have, but I can't think of an example in a long time. So I think that's like the power. That's like the part of the movie that'll stick with me, and that it's one of those ones that I'll probably watch again sometime in the future, just because it does that really well, and also just telling the story in a pretty concise, like, short amount of time. And it makes me think differently about how movies are done. We get so used to like A plot, B plot, and all of that, and like these last couple movies we watch, Honey Boy and Sound of Metal, are good examples of like how you can just do like a good one-track movie, and if it's really focused, it doesn't necessarily end up boring. And I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
So this movie is effective at what it tries to do, and it's just a way for Shia to kind of work on himself and process through things. And that's why I think this movie that's why it feels so raw. It feels so real. And that's what makes it so intriguing to watch. It is not a very entertaining film overall. Very tough scenes of child abuse and psychological abuse. But Shia LaBeouf's performance, I think, is worth the one-time viewing alone, because he is so good at, I mean, he's an asshole, but he also does a good job conveying what led him to being a piece of shit. He's kind of charismatic. He's funny at times. So a lot of really good complexities to his character, and Shia, he does a good kind of country accent too, so that helps his performance overall as well. And yeah, it's good, concise. It doesn't take too much of your time. Um, but what it has to say is pretty compelling. I just wish the ending was a little bit stronger. Solid film.
Oh, well, there you have it. I mean, when a movie is not entertaining, but it's intriguing, you can have a very, very thoughtful conversation like we just had, and we appreciate. So I'm choking up right now. I appreciate you joining us. But comment below. Did this touch you? Did this make you think about how you think about actors and actresses, about how they're big babies? They make all this money. No, they have a life. So did it make you think? Comment below, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on this film Schmucks.
Cut it.